What would you do if you witnessed someone deliberately harassing your disabled child right in front of you? How would you react when that person destroyed medical equipment your child depends on daily? This is exactly what I faced when our HOA president targeted my 12-year-old daughter, not realizing who she was really messing with. My name is Thalia Mercer, and until 6 months ago, I believed moving to Thornfield Gardens would give my daughter Zara the safe, accessible community she deserved. I was wrong. Our upscale neighborhood harbored a predator who wore designer clothes and wielded HOA regulations like weapons. Let me start from the beginning after my husband's death. 3 years ago, I threw myself into my legal career, eventually becoming a senior counsel and special advisor to the Justice Department on disability rights. My expertise wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. My daughter Zara has cerebral palsy and uses a walker and specialized assistive devices. Despite her physical challenges, she's brilliantly creative, painting stunning artwork using her mouth and feet. When her hands won't cooperate, her determination inspires me daily, even on the hardest days when the world seems designed to work against her. When I received a promotion last spring, we relocated to Thornfield Garden, an exclusive community in suburban Washington, D.C. I chose it specifically for its proximity to Zara's specialized school and medical facilities. The manicured lawns, brick facades, and tree-lined streets seemed perfect, a safe haven where Zara could thrive without the constant stares and thoughtless obstacles we'd encountered elsewhere. The homes were beautiful, the parks well-maintained, and the promotional materials boasted of a welcoming family-friendly atmosphere. The first red flag appeared before we'd even finished unpacking. Our welcome wagon arrived in the form of Gretchen Holloway, the 58-year-old HOA president. She appeared at our door while movers were still unloading boxes, immaculately dressed in a tailored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun that seemed to pull her skin uncomfortably tight. She carried a 3-inch binder of community regulations, holding it like a sacred text. "Welcome to Thornfield Gardens," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes, as they cataloged Zara's walker and our temporary portable ramp. "I'm sure you'll find our community maintains the highest standards. Everyone does their part to preserve our property value." I didn't miss her emphasis on everyone or the way her gaze lingered disapprovingly on our modification. Still, I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps she was just naturally formal. "We're happy to be here," I said, extending my hand. "Zara's excited about the community pool." "Ah, yes, about that." Gretchen's voice cooled several degrees as she reluctantly shook my hand, releasing it quickly as if contact might somehow contaminate her. "Our amenities are strictly for aesthetic and light recreational use. We don't have specialized equipment." The pause before specialized spoke volume. Zara, perceptive as always, wheeled her walker back slightly. I placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "We bring our own accommodation. The ADA requires reasonable access." Gretchen's smile tightened into something that looked physically painful. "Of course, just be sure to review Section 17 regarding medical equipment. Visibility. We like to maintain a certain atmosphere." She handed me the binder with a meaningful look. "The rules apply to everyone, Mrs. Mercer. No exceptions." After she left, Zara looked up at me with those wise eyes that always seem to see straight through people. "She doesn't like me, does she, Mom?" I knelt beside her walker, meeting her gaze. "She doesn't know you yet," I reassured her, though uneasiness had already settled in my stomach. "Once she does, she'll see how amazing you are." But part of me wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake bringing us here. That first interaction set the tone for what was to come, though I couldn't have imagined just how bad things would get. The first real conflict arose when I submitted plans for permanent handrails and a small ramp for our front entrance. The designs were tasteful, matching our home's brick exterior with wrought iron accents. I'd worked with an architect who specialized in accessible design to ensure they enhanced rather than detracted from the property. The modifications weren't just for convenience, they were essential for Zara's safety and independence. 3 days later, I received a certified letter with the Thornfield Garden HOA letterhead. My request was denied due to aesthetic incompatibility with neighborhood standards. The letter suggested I consider less visible solutions or alternative housing better suited to specialized needs. That last part made my blood boil. It wasn't just a rejection, it was a not-so-subtle suggestion that we didn't belong there as both a mother and an attorney specializing in disability rights. I knew this was textbook discrimination. I requested a meeting with the HOA board, which Gretchen scheduled for the following week. Her email dripping with condescension. We're always happy to explain our standards to new residents who may not understand our community value. The meeting took place in the Community Sense conference room. Gretchen presided at the head of a mahogany table flanked by 4 board members. Only Prescott Quinn, the treasurer, seemed actively engaged, nodding vigorously at Gretchen's every word like a well-trained puppet. The others looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact, as if ashamed of their complicity. I recognized their type, not malicious themselves, but lacking the courage to stand against a bully. Mrs. Mercer Gretchen began folding her hands primly on the table. While we sympathize with your situation, our covenants exist to maintain property values for everyone. Your proposed modifications would be visible from the street and create, frankly, an institutional appearance inappropriate for our residential aesthetic. The way she said, "sympathize with your situation," made it sound like Zara's disability was some kind of moral failing rather than a medical condition. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay professional, Miss Holloway. I replied calmly, "The Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act both clearly establish that reasonable accommodations must be permitted, even when HOA regulations exist. The modifications are necessary for my daughter's safe access to our home. The board has considered your request thoroughly," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken a tactic I'd seen countless times from those who felt their authority threatened by expertise. "Perhaps you should have researched our community standards before purchasing. Here there are other neighborhoods better suited to your specific circumstances." The implication was clear. People like Zara weren't welcome in Thornfield Garden. My legal training warred with my maternal instinct to protect my child from such blatant discrimination. I wanted to tell her exactly how many federal laws she was violating, but escalating the situation wouldn't help Zara. "In the short term, I'd like the board to reconsider," I said, keeping my voice measured. "The designs complement the architectural style and actually increase the property value by extending the usable square footage of our home. Many studies show accessible homes sell at premium prices in today's market." "We'll take a vote," Gretchen interrupted, clearly annoyed by my persistence, all in favor of upholding the denial. Only Gretchen and Prescott raised their hand. One board member, a younger woman with kind eyes, actually began to lower her hand in opposition, but Gretchen's glare froze her mid-motion. "The decision is final," Gretchen declared, though the 2-3 vote clearly didn't support her position. Motion carried. I knew then that this wasn't about rules or aesthetics. This was about power and prejudice, a toxic combination I'd encountered too many times in my professional work. Gretchen saw Zara as a threat to her vision of a perfect community, and she was willing to falsify votes to maintain that illusion. I installed the ramp and handrails anyway, working with a contractor who specialized in accessible modification. We used matching brick and wrought iron that blended seamlessly with our home's colonial style. If anything, the craftsmanship enhanced the property's appearance, transforming a generic entrance into something distinctive and elegant. The retaliation began. Immediately, first came daily fine notices for unauthorized exterior modifications. $100 per day slipped into our mailbox with passive-aggressive notes about community standards. Then certified letters threatening legal action arrived, each more strongly worded than the last. When these failed to intimidate me, Gretchen escalated at an emergency HOA meeting she called specifically to address recent violations. She displayed photos of institutional-looking ramps and medical facilities on a PowerPoint presentation. "Is this what we want Thornfield Gardens to become?" she asked the assembled neighbors, her voice trembling with manufactured concern. "A clinical facility. Where does it end? Hospital beds on front lawns, medical equipment visible from the street, ambulances disrupting our peace at all hours." Her fear-mongering was as transparent as it was offensive. She was deliberately conflating Zara's need for basic access with some dystopian vision of neighborhood decline to her evident frustration. Many neighbors were unmoved by her performance. Darius Wright, a special education teacher who lived 3 doors down, stood up. He was a tall, imposing man with a gentle demeanor that immediately commanded respect. "I've been watching how this situation has unfolded," he said, in his deep, measured voice. "The modifications to the Mercer home are tasteful and discreet. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about whether we want to be a community that welcomes everyone or one that excludes those who are different." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Gretchen's face flushed with anger as she abruptly adjourned the meeting. "But not before I noticed several neighbors nodding in agreement with Darius. This public challenge to her authority would not go unpunished, as we soon discovered. A week later, Zara noticed a new rule had been posted throughout the community. No walking on grass areas. Signs appeared overnight, specifically positioned along the small grassy area Zara used as a shortcut to reach the community center. Using this path had allowed her to avoid the longer route around the perimeter sidewalk, a significant help given her limited stamina. The alternative route added an additional quarter-mile to her journey, a significant burden given her mobility challenges. "Mom, they put these up because of me, didn't they?" Zara asked, her voice small, but her eyes showing understanding beyond her years. I couldn't lie to her. She deserved better than that. "I think they did, sweetheart," I answered honestly, "but we're going to fight it." "Why does she hate me so much?" Zara asked, the hurt in her voice breaking my heart. "I never did anything to her." I knelt beside her walker. "This isn't about you, Zara. Some people fear what they don't understand, and sometimes people like Miss Holloway need to control everything around them to feel important." Zara thought about this for a moment. "That's sad, really. She must be pretty unhappy inside her compassion, even toward someone who had shown her none." Filled me with pride and renewed determination. I filed a formal discrimination complaint with the HOA, citing the disparate impact of the new rule on residents with disabilities. I meticulously documented how the signs had appeared only after Zara had been seen using the grass pathway, and how the rule served no legitimate purpose except to target her in response. Gretchen and Prescott launched a subtle harassment campaign. Our trash cans were reported for being visible from the street, though they were in exactly the same location as our neighbors. Our mailbox was cited for being 2 inches too low. Anonymous complaints about noise disturbances arrived, though Zara and I lived quietly. Even the wind chimes on our back porch, well out of sight from the street, were deemed a nuisance through it all. Zara showed remarkable resilience. "They're just trying to make us leave, Mom," she said one evening, while working on a painting, carefully holding the brush in her mouth to create delicate strokes of a sunset. "But I like our house, and my new school, and Mr. Wright who helps me with math. I don't want to move again." Her determination strengthened my resolve. We wouldn't be driven out by discrimination disguised as rule enforcement. I began documenting every interaction, saving emails and recording conversations when legally permitted as a Justice Department attorney. I knew the importance of creating a paper trail. What I didn't know was how soon we would need it. The situation reached its breaking point during the annual Spring Festival, a celebration held in the community center gardens. Zara had been looking forward to it for weeks, excited to participate in the art exhibition where several of her mouth paintings would be displayed. She'd worked for months on special pieces just for this event, eager to share her talent with her new community. She wore her favorite blue dress and carried her special backpack, a medical-grade bag that contained her emergency medication, communication iPad, and adaptive tools. The backpack wasn't just an accessory, it was a lifeline that contained everything she needed to function independently and safely. It had been custom-made for her unique needs, with special compartments for her medication and padded storage for her fragile equipment. The insurance company had initially refused to cover its $1,200 cost, requiring months of appeals before they relented. We arrived early so Zara could help set up up her artwork. The gardens looked beautiful, with flowering cherry trees and tulips in full bloom. For a few hours, it seemed like the perfect day. Neighbors admired Zara's paintings, genuinely impressed by her talent. Several asked about her techniques, and she proudly demonstrated how she created her artwork using her mouth and sometimes her feet. She beamed with pride, momentarily, forgetting the difficulties of the past month. Then Gretchen arrived immaculately dressed in an expensive spring suit, surveying the festivities, like a queen inspecting her domain. Her smile vanished when she spotted Zara's specialized backpack propped beside her chair at the art exhibit. She marched over Prescott, trailing in her wake like an obedient shadow. "That equipment needs to be stored in the designated area," she said, pointing to a storage room at the far end of the community center. "This isn't equipment," I explained calmly. "It's Zara's medical backpack. It contains her medication and communication device. She needs to keep it with her. This is a social event, not a hospital." Gretchen insisted, her voice rising enough to draw attention from nearby attendees. "Unsightly medical items should be kept out of view. Section 17 of the regulations clearly states Section 17 doesn't apply to personal medical necessities," I interrupted, "and the ADA requires reasonable accommodation." "There you go again with your legal jargon." Gretchen sneered, her mask of civility slipping. "This is about community standard, not your special demand. Everyone else manages to follow the rules without constant exceptions." Several neighbors had stopped to watch the confrontation. Zara's face flushed with embarrassment, her shoulders hunching as she tried to make herself smaller, a protective posture I'd seen many times when she felt threatened or exposed. "The backpack stays with Zara," I said firmly. "This discussion is over." I turned away to help Zara adjust her artwork display, thinking the matter resolved. I was wrong. Moments later, I heard Zara cry out. I turned to see Gretchen yanking the backpack away from my daughter, who tried desperately to hold on to it with her limited grip strength. "If you won't comply with the rules, I'll enforce them myself," Gretchen declared, her face contorted with righteous indignation. "I've had enough of your special treatment demands." In her fury, she pulled violently at the bag. The specialized fabric tore with a sickening rip, spilling Zara's medication iPad and adaptive tools onto the ground. The custom-made expensive backpack, designed specifically for Zara's needs, was destroyed. Its main compartment hanging by threads, the adaptive straps torn away. Zara's face crumpled in distress. "My medicine!" she cried, looking at her emergency anti-seizure medication now scattered on the grass. Her communication iPad had fallen screen first onto the concrete path, its display shattered. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. A woman I'd never met, Marlo Finch, I would later learn, had been photographing the festival for the community newsletter. Her professional camera captured the entire incident in high-resolution detail. Gretchen's face twisted with anger, the backpack ripping apart, and Zara's expression of shock and fear. The rapid-fire click of her camera's shutter seemed to temporarily freeze Gretchen, who suddenly realized she had an audience. I rushed to Zara, helping her collect her scattered belongings. My hands shook with barely controlled fury, but my voice remained steady for my daughter's sake. "It's okay, honey. We'll get everything." Darius Wright and several other neighbors immediately came to our aid, helping gather Zara's medication and equipment. The crowd's mood had turned decisively against Gretchen, with murmurs of disapproval rippling through the onlookers. Someone handed me Zara's broken iPad, its screen a web of cracks. Another neighbor carefully collected the scattered pills from her seizure medication. I stood and faced Gretchen directly. "You've just willfully damaged necessary medical equipment. That's not only a violation of the ADA, but potentially a criminal act." Gretchen scoffed, though her confidence seemed slightly shaken by the crowd's reaction. "Don't threaten me with legal nonsense. I am the HOA president, and I decide what's acceptable in this community. Your daughter's medical issues are not our problem or responsibility." The casual cruelty of her words silenced the crowd. Even Prescott looked uncomfortable, taking a small step away from her, as if to distance himself from her statement. "Actually, I replied, reaching into my purse for my Justice Department identification as a senior counsel and special advisor to the Department of Justice on Disability Rights. I can assure you that what you've just done violates federal law. I held up my credentials, where everyone could see them. This isn't a matter of HOA regulations anymore. You've just committed an act of discrimination with dozens of witnesses. Gretchen's face palled slightly, but she recovered quickly, the momentary flash of fear replaced by defiance. So you have a government job that doesn't put you above our community rules. You're still subject to the covenants you agreed to when you purchased here. This isn't about community rules, I replied, my voice steady, despite the anger coursing through me. This is about violating my daughter's civil rights, and you've just done it in front of dozens of witnesses and on camera. I gestured toward Marlo, who stood with her professional camera, still documenting every moment. Gretchen's eyes widened as she realized the implications. There would be no denying what had happened, no claiming it was a misunderstanding. You can't intimidate me, she insisted, though her voice had lost some of its conviction. Prescott, tell her our legal position is sound. Prescott, looking considerably less confident, mumbled something about reviewing the matter with our attorneys before slipping away toward the refreshment table, abandoning his ally as the situation deteriorated. A neighbor I barely knew, an older woman with silver hair, stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Zara's shoulder. I'm so sorry this happened to you, dear, she said kindly. This is not what our community stands for. Those simple words of support opened a floodgate. Other neighbors stepped forward, offering assistance, expressing outrage at Gretchen's behavior. The community was choosing sides, and Gretchen found herself increasingly isolated that evening. I made several calls to colleagues at the Justice Department, initiated a formal complaint, and began gathering testimony from witnesses. Marlo Finch provided all her photographs and video footage, creating an undeniable record of the incident. Darius Wright organized other neighbors who had witnessed previous discriminatory actions, creating a timeline of Gretchen's campaign against us. What we uncovered was more disturbing than I'd imagined. 3 other families with disabled members had left Thornfield Gardens during Gretchen's tenure after experiencing similar harassment. Financial records revealed Prescott had misappropriated HOA funds for personal expenses while raising fees to cover the shortfall. Most damning was Gretchen's email correspondence obtained through legal discovery, revealing her explicit strategy to maintain property values by discouraging undesirable elements. Her code for residents with disability. One email to Prescott was particularly revealing. The Mercer situation is our priority. If that child becomes a fixture here, others will follow. Property values will plummet. We need to make their stay uncomfortable enough that they leave voluntarily. I scheduled an emergency HOA meeting with the support of board members who'd grown increasingly uncomfortable with Gretchen's leadership. I arrived with 2 colleagues from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Their presence lending official weight to the proceedings, the community center was packed with residents standing along the wall. When the seats filled, Gretchen sat rigidly at the front. Her usual confidence noticeably diminished when she tried to begin with routine matters. I interrupted before we proceed with regular business. We need to address serious legal matters affecting this association. I announced, standing to ensure everyone could see me. The Department of Justice has opened a formal investigation into violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act occurring in 2018, Thornfield Gardens. Gretchen attempted to interject, but I continued my years of courtroom experience, evident in my command of the room. These violations include the destruction of medical equipment, implementation of rules specifically designed to discriminate against residents with disabilities, and a documented pattern of harassment. I played Marlo's video footage on the large screen, the images leaving no doubt about what had transpired. Gasps filled the room as residents watched Gretchen rip apart Zara's backpack. The close-up shots of Zara's frightened face brought several residents to tears. That video has been edited, Gretchen protested weakly, rising from her seat. This is a coordinated attack on my leadership. Mrs. Mercer has been difficult since she arrived, demanding special treatment and exceptions to our rule. The unedited footage has been authenticated by forensic experts, I responded, and it's just one piece of evidence in a substantial case that includes testimony from multiple residents and former residents who experienced similar discrimination. I outlined the potential legal consequences, not just for the HOA but for Gretchen and Prescott. Personally, federal fines, civil liability, and even criminal charges for destruction of medical equipment were all on the table. As a community, I concluded you now face a choice. You can continue under leadership that has exposed you to significant legal liability, or you can take corrective action and cooperate with the Justice Department to implement proper accessibility policies. The vote to remove Gretchen and Prescott from the board was nearly unanimous. Only 3 hands remained down theirs, and one elderly resident who had fallen asleep during the presentation as security escorted Gretchen from the building. She turned to me with a venomous glare. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "But people like your daughter will never truly fit in here. This isn't over, actually. It is over," I replied calmly. "And Zara fits in perfectly with the community's true values of compassion and inclusion. You're the one who never belonged here." Gretchen. The aftermath transformed Thornfield Garden. Darius Wright was elected as the new HOA president and immediately established an Accessibility and Inclusion Committee with Zara as its youngest member. The Justice Department entered into a consent decree with the HOA requiring comprehensive training on disability rights and federal monitoring. For 5 years, we discovered something unexpected. During the legal proceeding, Marlo Finch revealed she had been working on a photography project documenting the lives of people with disabilities. When she captured the incident, her photographs of Zara, showing both her struggles and her artistic talents, became part of a gallery exhibition titled Unseen Abilities that traveled to museums nationwide. Gretchen faced civil penalties and was required to pay for replacement of Zara's specialized equipment. The criminal investigation revealed she had also embezzled funds through a landscaping company registered in her sister's name. Facing mounting legal troubles and social ostracism, she sold her home at a loss and left the community. Prescott cooperated with investigators in exchange for leniency, revealing that Gretchen had a personal vendetta against families with disabilities stemming from her own family history. Her daughter, we learned, had been born with a rare genetic condition, but rather than accept and support her child, Gretchen had essentially abandoned her to institutional care. Rarely visiting, her crusade against visible disability seemed rooted in her own unresolved shame and guilt. This revelation didn't excuse her actions, but helped the community understand the depth of her dysfunction. It also inspired a community outreach program to a nearby residential facility for disabled adults, where many residents discovered Gretchen's daughter lived. While Gretchen never reconciled with her daughter, several Thornfield Gardens families developed meaningful relationships with the facility residents, bringing them to community events and enriching everyone's lives through these new connections. 1 year later, Thornfield Gardens had become a model community for accessibility and inclusion. The formerly restrictive rules had been replaced with compassionate policies that maintained aesthetic standards while ensuring access for all residents. The Spring Festival now featured an expanded adaptive art program inspired by Zara's talent. During the investigation, we also discovered that Darius Wright was himself hard of hearing, but had hidden his hearing aids from Gretchen, fearing discrimination. Now he wore them openly, his own visibility, encouraging other residents with hidden disabilities to stop concealing their assistive devices. Zara blossomed in this transformed environment. Her mouth and foot paintings gained recognition beyond our community, with a local gallery hosting her first exhibition titled Beyond Barriers. The confidence she developed helped her advocate for other children with disabilities, speaking at her school and even at a congressional hearing on educational access. As for me, I continued my work at the Justice Department with a renewed sense of purpose, using our experience to shape policy recommendations that would prevent similar discrimination. Nationwide, I also conducted workshops for HOA boards across the country, teaching them how to balance community standards with legal obligations toward residents with disability. One evening, as Zara and I sat on our front porch, accessible by the very ramp that had started our battle, she looked thoughtfully at the neighborhood. "Mom," she said, "do you think Gretchen ever understood what she did wrong?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people are so focused on what they think is right that they can't see how they're hurting others." Zara nodded her wisdom beyond her years. "I'm glad we didn't leave when things got hard. Now other kids like me can live here too." That moment crystallized everything I had fought for. Not just my daughter's right to equal access, but her right to feel she belonged, that her presence was valuable rather than something to be hidden away. The battle with Gretchen had been painful, but it transformed not just our community, but how Zara saw herself. She no longer tried to make herself smaller or less noticeable. She proudly navigated our neighborhood, greeting neighbors who valued her presence. If you've ever faced discrimination because of a disability, your own or a loved one's, know that the law stands with you. No community association has the right to exclude or harass residents based on disability. The fight may be difficult, but the Americans with Disabilities Act and Fair Housing Act provide powerful protection. As for Gretchen, I heard she moved to a senior community in Florida. Ironically, her new home has strict accessibility requirements due to the aging population. Perhaps there's justice in that too. Eventually, most of us will need accommodations as we age. The ramps and handrails she fought so vigorously against might someday have helped her own mobility. If you're watching this and facing similar discrimination, don't be silent. Document everything. Know your rights and reach out for help. Sometimes justice requires standing firm, even when it would be easier to walk away, or in Zara's case, roll away. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to HOA Revenge for more true stories of justice served. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. If you faced HOA discrimination, share your story. You might help someone else find the courage to fight back. And remember, the next time someone tries to enforce discriminatory rules, they should consider who they're really dealing with. The quiet mother and her disabled daughter might just have the knowledge, resources, and determination to change an entire community for the